Well, good day, everybody. This is Chris with the Ancient Scholar, and today what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about a heroic measure that might need to be taken involving ventilator management, and this is something that has been discussed in multiple venues. So I'm certainly not the only person to talk about this, and this is a concept known as split ventilation, and that is effectively ventilating two patients using one ventilator. Now, clearly, there are many different problems associated with this. This is a suboptimal situation at best, and I'm not necessarily recommending this, and I'm not saying that this should ever be a standard of care, but what I am saying is that it is something that is possible in the setting of a critical shortage where you have multiple patients with severe lung pathology that need to be intubated, that need mechanical ventilation, and perhaps you find yourself in a situation where you are making a very hard decision. Again, I am not telling people that this is something they need to integrate into their clinical practice. I'm not even saying this is good clinical practice. I'm saying that this might be necessary or might be something to consider depending on how critical a situation you may find yourself in. So with that caveat out of the way, let's just talk about this. So this is in fact split ventilation. You can see I am ventilating these two intubated mannequins at the same time with the same ventilator. Now there is a lot of nuance, lots of caveats, and I'm going to talk about some of that here. But this first video is just to show you proof of concept and to show you that it is possible. And in fact, there are even ways of ventilating up to 4 different patients using one ventilator. However, that becomes more complex and it may very easily overwhelm the capacity of the ventilator. And again, just doing this is not in line with the indications for mechanical ventilation. That is to say that the manufacturers of these ventilators are not coming out and saying, yeah, go ahead and do this. But we've already established that this would be a heroic salvage type of situation that we're dealing with. So let me just show you how I did this. There are multiple ways to arrive at this setup, but this is a way that I feel is fairly easy to do and can be accomplished with some basic equipment. So first of all, this is a Dragear Vita XL ventilator, but you could, in principle, do this with any sufficiently complicated ventilator. So you see down here, I have my inspiratory and my expiratory ports, and let's just go ahead and talk about what these ports do. So white is the expiratory and blue is inspiratory. So air is coming out of the ventilator, going through the blue tubing into the patients, and when the patients exhale, right, these are just standard Y sites, air is being exhaled through these clear or white tubing into the expiratory port. So how do we do this? Well, what I did is, first of all, we need to protect the ventilator. So you can see I put viral filter, HEPA filter here and here. So both my inspiratory and expiratory ports, inspiratory and expiratory ports have viral filters, all right? And then you can see I put a viral filter as close as I possibly could to the patient. Now, both of these patients have inline suction attached. So clearly the inline suction is in front of the viral filter, but I've attached the viral filter as close as I possibly could to the distal aspect of the endotracheal tubes, right? So that does a couple of things. First of all, it protects the ventilator from contamination. And you see I kind of have a double protection mechanism here. I have a viral filter at the patient and a viral filter at the expiratory port, and I also put one inspiratory as well. Again, it's just for safety. And the other reason that I've put these two here is to prevent, because these patients are breathing on the same circuit, there's always a risk of cross-contamination occurring from patient to patient, right? So we're assuming in this case that these are both COVID-19 patients who have fairly similar lung characteristics. That is to say that their compliance is fairly similar and they require fairly similar levels of ventilatory support. Otherwise, it becomes more complicated to manage these particular patients, if not impossible. But I've put these filters here in addition to help prevent cross-contamination from patient to patient. So I believe this is probably the safest setup that you can get. So what I did here in this case is I just took some extra tubing. You don't necessarily need this extra tubing, but it was nice because it helped me kind of extend it out and give me some space to work with. But you don't need the tubing this long. This just makes it a little easier to demonstrate. You could just cut a very short segment, but again, it just gives me a little extra stuff to work, a little extra space to work with. So what I did in this case is I just got a standard T-piece. I believe these are called Briggs T-piece adapters, right? And again, there are many ways you can do this with many of the different adapters and different sizes of adapters and T-pieces that you have at your particular institution. But I just use kind of a standard T-piece. I believe this is a 22 millimeter. I believe it's a 22 millimeter adapter. And what I did is I just took, normally what would happen is this here, the expiratory port, the inspiratory port, would just connect directly to either the HEPA filter or the port itself. And so what I did is, instead of this connecting directly here, this is connecting to one end of the T-piece, right? So one patient is going here, the other patient is connected here, and then the ventilator is connected down here. And so that effectively allows me to split the ventilator. Let me just hit the alarm here. I'm running off of compressed air, so the ventilator is just giving some alarms there. All right, so you can see that I have the inspiratory limb. I brought it down, attached it to this T-piece that is effectively split the inspiratory limb, and now I can attach each inspiratory limb to each end of that T-piece. All right. Now for the expiratory limb, it's the same thing. Normally, each patient's expiratory limb right here would attach to the expiratory HEPA filter. But again, what I did is I took some tubing, and again, you could cut this really short. It doesn't need to be this long, but it just helps give me some space to work with. Attach that to another T-piece or Briggs adapter, and I then attached each expiratory limb, one here, so patient one here, patient two here, come together, and then both patients exhale through this filter into the ventilator. And so you can see that the ventilator is ventilating both patients. And I have a reasonably good setup. So in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through step by step how to set this up so you can visualize it. If you're a visual person kind of like me and this doesn't make as much sense, I hope to walk you through step by step how to do this setup so it makes a little more sense. All right, guys, I hope you found this video helpful. And as always, please take care. And hopefully you're doing well given the contemporary situations and circumstances we find ourselves in.